Stay the fuck away. Stay the fuck away. Stay the fuck away. Stay the fuck away. Hey everybody, Sean Patrick here. Lots been happening since we last chatted, so let's get down to it. Now, south of the border, Trump finally got his wish. After aggressively trying to since before any of us even knew it existed, he caught the icky. And just like every other American, he was airlifted from his publicly funded home, taken care of by a whole team of doctors, given experimental treatments, and then helicoptered home. And he reacted to this just as expected, by being a fucking asshole. Now, everyone's been up in arms about him taking off his mask on his front porch, but I didn't see anyone else nearby, and he's done so many more insane and ignorant things that I don't understand why that's a focus. How about the fact that he won't tell anyone when his last negative test was or give other pertinent information to contact tracers? How about the fact that in his appearances on September 24th and since, he's been sounding raspy and plugged? How about the fact that he knew he had been in close contact with someone who had tested positive, yet he continued to hold events without masks or distancing? Or how about just his continued existence? As of last night, ABC News reported that he has infected as many as 34 White House staff, politicians, his own family. But with the Trump administration's bold new take on transparency, who knows? As long as White House staff are also smart enough not to pay their taxes, they might be able to afford a small percentage of the care the American people just paid for El Presidente, thanks to which he's now upped his Twitter rampage and claims that he's been cured. A while back, I renamed the COVID virus the Icky for David Ickey's attempts to further its spread. But now, in honor of Donald spreading the virus like a fire in an improperly maintained forest, I hereby rename it Drumphitis. And so, my virtual hugs and kisses go to the 212,000 dead Americans and their families that couldn't afford a helicopter and aren't golf buddies with Lenny Schlafer, chief executive of Regeneron. Don't let Drumphitis rule your life. Now, I'd like to do what I do best. No, I just had a drink. No, I'm not doing that again on camera. Yeah, we did make a lot of money. But no. No, I mean, kick a journo. Now, I read an article published by CBC with the headline, "A BC research project gave homeless people $7,500 each. The results were beautifully surprising." So in 2018, the Vancouver-based charity Foundations for Social Change teamed up with UBC to make these cash payments and then keep tabs on the recipients over the course of a year. They found 115 people between the ages of 19 and 64 who had no serious addiction or mental health issues and had been homeless for about 6 months or more. 50 of the participants received the cash, and the remaining were the control group. So the New Leaf Project, as they called it, found that days spent homeless dropped by 28%. After 1 month, 67% of recipients were food secure, and they found stable housing, in 3 months on average versus the control group's 5 months. Spending on booze and other drugs dropped 39%. Many recipients had savings, and this resulted in a net savings of about $600 per person on our social programs. While that may not seem like much, that's on top of the massive increase in quality of life for these people and the societal benefit as a whole, which is priceless. And all this is great, but my problem with the dink that wrote the article is the last line, which reads, according to the 2018 BC homeless count, there are about 7,600 homeless people living in the province, meaning a group of 115 study participants is relatively small. Now, while that statement is factually accurate, they never put that kind of disclaimer in their articles based on bullshit polls, which they herald as gospel truth. Most times, the journalists don't even put the number of respondents to the polls in their articles, and they certainly don't point out the relatively small group when saying things like Canadians believe, based on a nationwide poll of about 1,000 people. So why did they add it here? It's because of the stigma that if you hand a homeless person cash, they'll just blow it. This is the wrong messaging. Now, to be fair, if you just hand $7,500 to the guy with the glasses that only have one lens in, occasionally wears pants, and spends most of his time stroking and muttering to an imaginary cat, he's likely to spend it largely on tender victuals and kitty litter. And having been a junkie, I know what I would have done with a lot of cash in those days. But that's what our other pathetically underfunded social programs are supposed to be addressing. Not all homeless people have addiction or mental health issues. Some just had a rough go of things. And if we give those people the $7,500, the $600 per person saved can go to treatment for the others. Never mind the fact that we've helped people, and we've also helped them return to or become part of our society instead of leaving them to die slowly in tent cities that people bitch about. And speaking of messaging, a lot of people are having a hard time understanding our present COVID restrictions, especially how they relate to bars, restaurants, schools, and Thanksgiving. So I'm going to try to simplify this a bit. First of all, we have to stop calling it social distancing and refer to it as physical distancing because that's what it is. And the last thing we need is more antisocial people. Secondly, the government is attempting the insanely difficult balancing act of economy versus public health and safety. How are they going to pay us all to stay home indefinitely? This is what's causing them to say things like stay home, but restaurants are open. Or limit gatherings to 10 people, but don't have people over for Thanksgiving. They're trying very hard not to be dictators, and nobody wants to go back to the full lockdown. Now, an extremely large portion of our economy is based on the service industry, much of which, like strip clubs, just plain can't reopen until after widespread vaccinations. Sorry, Sparkles. But if we followed the guidelines properly, things like bars, gyms, banquet halls, schools, and Thanksgiving wouldn't be an issue. But what about schools? Well, schools are our main source of daycare. Without the schools being open, a far greater proportion of our population wouldn't be able to return to the workforce. At the same time, no, it isn't fucking safe to have 30 plus people in a classroom. What they should do is split the classes and hire supervisors for each of the 15 student classrooms while a teacher teaches through Skype or Zoom or whatever the kids are into these days to multiple classes at a time. This virtual teacher could also be used for the online learning option. That would help keep the structure for those who can do schooling online, who will eventually be returning to school in person. Well, where do we find these supervisors? Well, there's a ton of people out of work. But, like, how about all the Polish strippers? You know, well, where do we get all the space for these extra classrooms? Well, banquet halls and conference rooms and arenas that right now can't function as they normally would. Okay, well, how do we pay for that? Well, by deferring the owner's property taxes. Even though that would be nowhere near as much as they would be making sans Drumphitis, because of it, they aren't making anything now. It would likely save many hotels and halls, even bring back some jobs. And as for Thanksgiving, if you're planning on having people over, make sure you get pictures because it may be the last time you see them. But it isn't just about them. It's about everyone. The more community spread there is, the sooner it gets into the schools and the care facilities, and the sooner the death toll skyrockets. Really, my point here is personal responsibility. We can't expect the government to just wave a magic wand and have Drumphitis disappear. If they could, they would. Well, except for Trump. But his wand only works for his ignorant, selfish ass, and nobody should want to be like him. We need to do things differently if we want things to change. Like giving the homeless $7,500. Like giving the strippers another job. Like looking out for one another. And right now, the best way we can do that is to wear a mask, stay the fuck away from each other, and wash everything. A lot.